First, just some brief background information about how all of this came about. Last January, the program director of New Hampshire Humanities Council, Kathy Smith, contacted Eva, telling us that she had been asked by Historic New England to find 3 sites in New Hampshire that might be appropriate locations for hosting the Smithsonian's The Way We Work exhibition. And might we be interested in participating? Other than shuffling around some of our previously scheduled exhibitions, it wasn't a hard call for us to say yes. And we asked when responding to Kathy Smith, would it be okay if we augmented the exhibit by focusing on aspects of the local history of work here in Lebanon? Her answer was thrilling to us. In fact, all organizations or institutions hosting this traveling exhibition, we are encouraged by the Smithsonian to add pertinent displays of local work history whenever possible. So, what would be a better match for us than to focus upon the history and on the former workers who dedicated most of their adult working lives to manufacturing in this very building, the former H.W. Carter & Sons overall factory. So that's what we have done, both in the display and through several of the programs that are offered here throughout the month. Before introducing this afternoon's speaker, I should mention that The Way We Worked, an exhibition created by the National Archives, is part of what is called Museum on Main Street, which is a collaboration between the Smithsonian Institution and local humanities councils throughout the United States. In this particular case, our gratitude is therefore extended not only to the Smithsonian Institution, but also to the New Hampshire Humanities Council and to Historic New England, the organization responsible for organizing this exhibit throughout New England. Closer to home, we wish to express our gratitude for the ongoing and generous support that Eva receives from Mascoma Savings Bank, and whose sponsorship of The Way We Work has been invaluable for our ability to offer such a comprehensive series of events. A special thank you is due to the many members of Lebanon Historical Society who so generously have provided us with a large number of items for display, many of them created right here in the Carter factory. I also wish to acknowledge the photographer Jack Rowell, whose work is on display behind me, and CATV for their amazing work, which will be particularly evident in the program presented next Sunday. Of course, the individuals portrayed here deserve a huge thank you for their willingness to participate in this project and for sharing their fascinating stories, and one of them is sitting right over there. A big thank you goes to Eva's staff and interns for all their hard work, and none deserves it more than our exhibition coordinator, Margaret Jacobs. In addition to the exhibit we are surrounded by here, she also curated the fascinating exhibit on display in our 2 adjacent galleries, titled The Way We Work, which features work by many of the artists who have studios in this venerable old building today. It emphasizes the creative process, work in progress, and the tools and materials that the artists use. Please be sure to go and take a look after the talk. And finally, our gratitude goes to our guest speaker, Professor Jere Daniell. For more than 40 years, he taught early American history at Dartmouth College, and about 25 years ago, he began exploring more in depth the history of various New England towns, be it a college town, a suburban town, a company town, or a mill town. Professor Daniell is a New Englander through and through, He grew up in a paper mill town on Millinocket, Maine, and has a family history in New Hampshire through the Daniell Paper Company. It is not surprising, therefore, that he takes particular interest in the early industrialization of New England. Professor Daniell and his wife Elena live in Hanover and are frequent visitors to Ava Gallery. Please join me in welcoming Professor Jere Daniell.
First, for you standees back here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 seats up here. You don't have to go public on it. You can sneak around the exhibit. So don't hesitate if this is your last chance. Secondly, does anyone not have access to what I now have 3 more copies of, but I keep one for myself, of this handout, which is a map of water power sites in New England and the mix of mill villages and larger, which became incorporated towns in Connecticut before the Civil War. Okay, here we go. Second form of introduction is that, as a person who does not own an iPad, doesn't even own a cell phone, who spends his life reading a lot of things called books, which some of you may be less and less familiar with. I have a large collection of books that have to do with New England generally and New England towns in particular, and I brought the ones that are most relevant to them here for people who afterwards want to hang around, too nervous to ask questions. Is that question and answer period, but want to talk to me privately to tell me about, I got one already, he's from East Millinocket, man. That's where I was actually lived my first 4 years, in East Millinocket. Then my father got transferred to be foreman of the grinder room in the Millinocket, Maine, and made so many enemies because somebody else wasn't promoted that he never got invited to be part of the Elks or the whatever the various fraternal organizations were. And I'm just going to go over what these are here. One of the best pieces of literature on a small factory town is about Harrisville, New Hampshire, and it's called Factory Under the Elms. Classic studies about the mill complexes called The Ambuscade, Life and Work of an American Factory City, down in Manchester. An exhibit at the Hood Museum, which was traveling. It is about photographs of New England mills, handsome photographs. A term paper I had from a student here, a student who interviewed people who used to work in the mills in Lebanon. How many people here recognize any of these names? These are the people interviewed: Florence Tupper, Richard Wood, Earl Burke, Francis Dulac, Dick Jones, and John Cone. Anyone know any of those people? Okay, we got several hands. There were interviews with them. Sort of the model mill community in a tourist sense is Lowell, Massachusetts. How many have been to the Lowell? I suspect a lot. You learn more about factory life, factory communities by exhibiting the sequence of exhibits in Lowell, and that's their tourist book. And the 2 things that have to do with Millinocket. And what I really like is an article that's called Death Watch in the Mill Town. The last part of my talk is going to be the decline of these mill towns in the 20th century. But I like the idea. Going back to Millinocket, not East Millinocket, that's kind of private. But it's like watching history in reverse. The population peaked at 7,500 about 25 years ago. It's down to 4,500. One of the things you can't do with a paper mill is recycle it. And the picture on the front of this Image of America series is of the paper loom in the mill in Millinocket, and you'll see why you can't. recycle paper mills the way you can H.W. Carter, other stuff. Okay, so those are the books I've got there, and one more form of introduction. I'm a historian. Before I go through the process of just mill communities, I do want to, that's the real subject. Towns are generic. Eleanor comes from the town of Rockingham. Bellows Falls is an incorporated village in the town of Rockingham. Most, numerically, of the early factory communities were village communities. 10, 20 employees at the most. In New England, for a variety of reasons, if you get tired of being a town, usually because you didn't want all the French and the Italians and others vote, then you turned into a city, so to get rid of a town meeting. I've got a list here of the 13 cities I think there are in New Hampshire. They all got formed, towns transformed into cities during the period of the middle part of my talk, sort of the golden age of the mill communities. You're a city here in Lebanon, but that's a weird story. It's got nothing to do with Milltown. This is just Pearlie, who was a corrupt head of the Board of Selectmen, and forming the city was the way to get rid of it. Engineered by the Valley News. In 1957. I think the first town after in the 20th century, and I'm sure of that turned into a city. So basically, what my interest is in community development that is special to industrialization, whether it happens to be these villages or towns or cities themselves. And then finally, by way of introduction, this talk is especially about Lebanon. You've got a lot of other talks in the series, the documentary that's going to come about this building itself. Bob Walsh, who's going to give one later on all the mill sites, the mills, the buildings that were in Lebanon. But everywhere in my general observations where I can bring in Lebanon as an example, I'll do so. Okay? There's the introduction. Now to the story itself. I always like to tell people how many parts there are to my talks. 2 reasons, so if they get bored, they can count them off. The second is I like to break at the end of a major part to see if there are just questions about what I've gone over so far. So there'll be 2 break points in this. The first part, number 1, as it says in my notes here, which I redid yesterday and today, is really the origins of what we think of as mill towns, and the time period covered roughly from 1800 up to just before the Civil War, to mid-century. There were 2 mutually reinforcing processes. One was the development of large factory complexes, of which Lowell was the most famous, but there was others in Holyoke and Manchester came out of that model, based on what we historians call the Waltham system, because it started in Waltham, Massachusetts, at a small head of water. I think it's less than 20 feet. The more head of water you've got, the more water power you've got along the Charles River, but moved quickly under Boston Capital to what was then initially called East Chelmsford, then became Lowell when Chelmsford was divided, and these are products of basically the same kind of force that dealt with, the second part of this is going to be a proliferation of mill villages. Mill villages, just smaller concentrations. They're all part of larger towns. And that's why I handed out the map of Connecticut. Connecticut supposedly prides itself on having more patents per capita than any other state in the Union. I don't know whether that's true or not, but if it does, it's because of those mill villages. And I'll be talking about that later. Okay? And I'm going to deal with this first in terms of the large scale, the end, the Lowells, the Manchesters, the Holyokes. It started in Waltham, and the fundamental conception was rooted in, well, actually I'm going to do this a bit differently. What I'm going to do is first deal with the general conditions that produced both of them. First one, water power. Can't do it without water. They didn't have electricity. They had no high tension wires. Steam didn't become into the latter part of the 19th century. You put something so the weight of water could produce circular motion drove machines, and that's where I've got the map, and the big rivers got closed, as Lowell did by damming the Merrimack River. The little villages were on the tributaries, as the Mascoma, or even smaller tributaries. A second factor besides water power that affected both of these, the large and the small, was growing markets. You've got to be able to sell the stuff that you're producing. That has to do with a rapidly developing, changing transportation system that started with what we call turnpikes, which is toll roads, early ones, some canals, not important around here. A lot of them were planned around here that didn't get developed, and eventually, just before the mid-century, railroads. Another factor that stimulated this was demand for products because of the War of 1812 and its predecessors, which meant cut off goods that came before that, largely from Europe. And still another growing factor was more and more people. They needed more and more textiles. And New England had the fastest growing population in the 18th century, probably in the colonial period in the world. Early on, 6 surviving children per family. Has begun to decline by the latter part of by the American Revolution. Internal growth rate of 3% a year without immigration. England's growth rate was 0.4%. You lived longer in New England because of the winters. They say New England invented grandparents. In the early 17th century, the average age of males dying was under 40 because of the various forms of disease. Part of the reason slavery grew, Africans had an immunity to certain types of malaria. So population growth, and a lot of that could get turned into a potential labor supply for this factory work. The labor supply being basically got from war with England just meant maritime trade and shipbuilding came to a virtual halt. And the way that agriculture worked, you'd have a problem if you had nothing but daughters or nothing but sons. There was an exchange of children among an extended family. There's a term we use for corporate business. The business sort of disappeared because it doctored out. And in this case, basically, surplus of female labor first began to manufacture goods on the farm. And some males were involved in hats, some textiles, and other things. A factory was a building where some entrepreneur gathered the raw material and then, at a certain time of year, delivered it in an ox cart on these turnpikes around and collected up the finished work, manufactured, hand, the factor was, and brought it back to a plant. There was no machinery in the plant. Industrialization was a product of bringing the workforce to a location where power provided by water could increase production and the profit supposedly for entrepreneurs. And that's how this basically started in Waltham. Somebody conceived of the idea of starting the technology for this was stolen from England. These people were very visually oriented. In your world of art history, Samuel F.B. Morse, you remember as an inventor, he was an artist. He didn't do anything in laboratories in science, like you get up in biology departments now. He visualized what already existed, packaged in a new way to produce what we call invention. So that there was a close tie and that came from this, and so people visited England. England tried to make secret its textile machines, but they couldn't, because you just look at it, wasn't that interesting? You visualize, I could never be an art historian. I have no visual memory. And one of the keys to be the kind of historian I am is I have a bad general memory. Because in history, you have to get rid of 95% of the stuff that goes over your eyes. So you develop the habit of writing down what you want to remember. And so you get together and put notes down for a talk. You don't have a lot of stuff out there you're not going to use. It's just, and so your job is packaging, like Morse did when he invented the telegraph. And Waltham simply didn't have the power. And another component that came into the feeding into both what appeared at Lowell and later on was something that you can't really prove, but you know is right in the sense that it's useful to give lectures and people like it. And I'm going to be talking here about mentality and New England. I'm going to start by reading a not long quotation from somebody you've probably heard of negatively, Cotton Mather, and it's called A Christian at His Calling. There are two callings to be minded by all Christians. Every Christian has a general calling, which is to serve the Lord, but then every Christian also a personal calling or a certain particular employment, sounds like an economics course at this point, by which his usefulness and his neighborhood is distinguished. There should be some special business wherein a Christian should for the most part spend the most of his time, and thus so that he may glorify God by doing a good for others and getting of good for himself. Yea, a calling is not only our duty, but also our safety. A Christian should follow his occupation with industry, discretion, honesty, contentment. That's a pretty good mentality to start off in one of these risky businesses, harnessing water power and memorized technology from England. And Lowell was the product of it. It was financed by capital from maritime trade, a group called the Boston Associates. This technology was relatively easy to understand. I won't try to describe it here. It's in there, but basically what they did is they dammed the Merrimack River, redirected water, and then to a common lake, made several canals coming off the lake, factories lined the south, east, and emptied into the Concord River as it came out. So you had a controllable water supply. The other technology had to do with various ways of making more efficient use of the water that went through there. There was also a social purpose, clearly articulated from the beginning. The goal of the people in Lowell was to avoid the human costs that one could see at that time in English cities, especially Manchester in England. And how they did that was to, this is cost effective, use women operatives. Women operatives basically were more skilled, they were clumsy, the way younger men did. They were accustomed to the kind of routine that they, and housed them in almost like small colleges, which they earned their way by working in the mills. Those boarding houses, we read a lot of literature from them. They had literary magazines. They had religious services. A lot of people who worked there wrote memoirs about it. There's a massive kind of academic literature on this. And it had an economic payoff for the women. At that time, marriage patterns dictated that the woman bought something called the dowry to marriage. Agriculture was already beginning to decline in New England. With all these children, it was very, very common in which the family simply could not provide any dowry. So they could earn their dowry and get away from the drudgery of farm work by going down to Lowell. Most of the women who went to Lowell in these early years stayed less than, I think the current estimate now is less than 4 years. Earned money for a dowry, decided maybe not to go back to the farm, other options may have come out of it. So they had no problem in getting a workforce. And the golden age of the stuff like Lowell, in that sense, was until the late 40s. Then a dramatic process began to change. What happened at Lowell? Waltham was still functioning, but not as visible as Lowell. And that was Irish immigration. The Irish would work for much less. They'd work as a whole family. The attitudes toward the role of women in life began to change. They should be working in the factory. That's a long, long process. True Color of Womanhood is a well-known book in my field. And what we assumed that period in which the workforce was primarily female came to an end before the Civil War. The second part of this origins are these factory villages that I've shown you. Those are the ones with the dots, not the squares on your map. Lebanon before 1850 was more like what I mapped out, what the drawer was mapped out in Connecticut. There was a small factory village here in this area. There was one down in West Lebanon, although that was more tied, that area between the railroad center later on. There was one at the outlet of Lake Mascoma. It wasn't until after the Civil War that the large collection of textile factories down just below the big falls in the center of the town came. And this created an immense opportunity for individual, small-time, ambitious entrepreneurs. So we've got 6 kids, one of them is at least going to be ambitious, maybe. If they go to church enough and listen to Cotton Mather, maybe 2 of them are going to be ambitious on this. There were multiple falls in all of the tributaries of these rivers that came into the Connecticut or the Penobscot or the Kennebec or the Piscataqua River. So at almost every fall, some kind of enterprise would be, and many of these enterprises took on the functions that we associate with the larger communities. For example, taking care of the poor, taking care of them, and then a company would used to, somebody's, before we had public services on this, the town would auction off Aunt Bess for the lowest bidder, who would take care of Aunt Bess for the year at whatever the fee was, $2.13. And companies would use these to sweep up, they also often, in as much as they had an educational system, this was the district schools, they would finance the district school to try to have, as became much more formalized later, the kinds of skills that would be needed in whatever the enterprise that they had. In my opinion, these were so numerous that collectively they were just these villages, mill villages, is important in the development of the nation's commitment to later what we call capitalism. Marx gave the term pretty much, because you develop a nation of entrepreneurial energy and mentality. And also with a capacity, I think, to invent, to make marginal improvements in whatever, whether you're making schools with bread or whatever it is, like that right over there. I didn't have that planted before. Somebody working here in Lebanon got a bright idea and ended up implementing it and patenting it. And over on that side wall is a more elaborate machine. So I linked its village culture of entrepreneurialism in Connecticut to Connecticut's claim of a very high percentage of people. Lots of these enterprises failed. There's one thing that distinguished the United States very quickly from England, was it was easy to fail and come back. Very, very generous bankruptcy laws. And so you took risks. And if you failed, maybe you did it again. But the third time you made it. And so you had a whole region filled with people with entrepreneurial experience. That's the end of part one. Two things. Lowell. That's it. Call them cities if you want in town. Anybody got any questions about that before I go to what I had? The next note says, factory communities in the Gilded Age, which takes us from after the Civil War to World War I. Yes?
Was there any talk whatsoever about environmental depreciation in this period?
No.
I just recently reading on the Blackstone where Slater started.
Yes.
And they said the city of Worcester, actually, there's a quote saying that the river should be the sewer for all of
Yeah. Well, the answer is, I mean, basically, I know why you asked the question, and that begins to come in the end of the second period, where the cost in terms of degradation and environmental, and also water control. As you get big enterprises, almost every pond in New Hampshire has been raised up. You want a real rebellion on your hands, go back to nature. And that means all the dams in most every pond in New England. The water level is going to get down. And all these people who spent megabucks on the summer camps are really going to be pissed off. But that saved water. Okay, part two, basically. Lebanon got dominated, but not dominated, but very, very closely by mills. It was in the second half of the 19th century. And because the biggest falls in the Mascoma River were here in town, still see them down here. And they looked at it as water power. I always look at it as fishing sites, but that's because I'm part of the third part of the story. Part of it was tied to technology. Then you had to be able to harness that water. And you just develop techniques of controlling it, building dams behind it, and near the end of the century, boiling it, and making something called steam, so that you're not on the river here. The early ones, this thing gets started in was it 1894? Somebody here ought to know that when this stage started. That couldn't have been built until you had steam power. Many of the major sites of these factory developments became incorporated as cities. Here, I did bring my list here. Manchester in 1846, Portsmouth in 1849, Nashua in 1853, Dover in 55, Keene in 73, Rochester, these are all the cities in New Hampshire, 1891, Laconia in 93, Somersworth in 93, Franklin. My background is both in Millinocket and Franklin. There used to be a Daniell paper company in Franklin. Berlin in 97. Lebanon is off the chart in 1957. I say that's a different story. And that was a way that entrepreneurs could dominate governance in these communities. Basically, and the details of that are different from each city. Each city's got its own charter. But generally, the big question is, do you allow voting by wards, which tend to be ethnically specific? Little Italy in Millinocket. Or general, everyone votes. And the people who are the entrepreneurs want everyone to vote because they can dilute the ethnic part of it, and it's more closely related to the jobs in the mills. So that cities, as a form of government, reinforce in the community the commitment to, that's one factor as a whole. And in the United States at this time, there was an immense amount of concern about what was happening in the society, what they were concerned about. I'm just listing quickly: urbanization, same thing we talk about a lot today, social stratification, the rich get richer and the poor don't get poorer, changing work patterns. It's different if you're working on a farm and you get up and say it's raining, I'll do this or that, than showing up at 8:03 for a class conflict, strikes, that sort of thing, labor versus management. I'm more interested in the kind of the intellectual, what goes on in people's minds. You don't understand people's behavior. You've got to get in to their minds. We have the decisions we make, in a sense. So mentality, more or as much as pocketbooks, dictate behavior. And the responses to all of these problems were a belief in progress, what I like to call the GNP mentality, what we call social Darwinism, the belief that those who succeed are morally superior. And that means that don't, and you can see the whole picture. Marxism was a response, another great appeal in the abstract in the United States. The one that really fits into what I'm concerned with is a fascination with the idea that industrial communities could be made where all of these things didn't occur that you disliked. Industrial communities that were cooperative, harmonious, in which the entrepreneurs, basically, if they were successful, distributed their wealth to the community. The big national model on this was Andrew Carnegie, of course. We built, I don't know how many, 360 libraries throughout the country. There was an example, I want to get the historical precedents for this. What happens in the past has got a little bit, not much to do with what happens in the present. It was the Puritan conception of an organic community. You know, New England towns were in many cases successful utopian experiments. There was basically not only the Puritan background to it, but examples before the Civil War, the early experiment in Lowell. Probably the most closely watched after mid-century was the ambuscade in Manchester. A tape of these of an idea of an English philosopher called Robert Owen, who had advertised the idea of a new harmony, was the term, of a community based on factory, not upon agriculture, which was led to as stable a productive human communal experience as you could manage. There was a special take of this idea in New England because of its religious background, those examples I've mentioned, and especially important, the decentralized nature of governance. Now, towns as we know them do not exist outside of New England. Counties are the major form of communal organization. Towns are much smaller than towns. The New England towns had the town meeting, all that ritual. This is not a talk on towns, but they're small, which meant that you could dominate them if you start a successful entrepreneurial enterprise. Not only that, their organization was flexible enough so you could create new communities out of the corners. Franklin, New Hampshire, got formed in the 1820s out of the corners of Sandmerton, Andover, Salisbury, and Northfield, at the falls of the Winnipesaukee River. There were Harrisville that formed later on. And Tilton, New Hampshire is another one. You could create a town because of its industrial potential. So that's just all things in New England. It's water power, dependability of its water power. Every part of it's got 35 to 45 inches of rain a year in a natural storage system called winter. So New England was a natural place where you worked toward this, and the result was a proliferation of communities that were dominated by the factories or the mills or the whole economic enterprise associated with factories and mills. There's a massive literature on this, most of it coming out of the post-Vietnam revival, in which everyone wanted to see oppressed workers in mills. And because you dislike Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street is one of the residents of that, you wanted to blame everything on management. What there has been almost no literature on, in my world, is the impact of this on the communities in which those mills existed. And that's my main concern. I can make my life as a historian by picking around the edges that other people won't want to touch. Popular talk I'm giving now is about how everyone in New England towns avoided service in the Civil War. Those drafted in New Hampshire, only less than 2% actually served. Anyway, that's another talk. It's a very interesting one. So, and two kinds of just packaging of kinds of communities came out of this economic prosperity. The ones that I know best personally were what one calls a company town. One company dominated. Examples of this would be Harrisville, New Hampshire, with the Cheshire Mill from the Colony family from Keene. The one that's most visible around here is St. Johnsbury, Vermont, Fairbanks Scale Manufacturing, the Fairbanks family. Millinocket, Maine was certainly one, or East Millinocket too. The Great Northern Paper Company, Manchester, New Hampshire, by Amoskeag, and that's where much of this literature up here is about them. The impact of these corporations, these mills, on the community hit every dimension of what went on within the community. Just for example, take education. In Stearns High School, which I graduated from in 1950, there were 5 concentrations. Mechanical arts metal, mechanical arts wood, secretarial, general, and college prep. I'm one of 3 college graduates of a class of about 90. So college prep was not the most popular. The expectation was that you were going to work in the mill. You were post-appointed. If you were male, you went into the military. It was the most common form of that. If you were a woman, later on hairdressing or something. Marriage courtship took place in high school, not in college or afterwards. It was because the expectation was you were going to stay there. Families could promise their kids they would have to work in the mill. If you were Italian, you lived in Little Italy, you dominated the paper room. If you were French, you dominated the woods force. Education, and informally as well as formally, by the patterns of expectation that came. Still remember very powerfully, it was less than 10 years ago, a little ratty 6-hole golf course in Millinocket. I was there, and of the 4 starters of the basketball team, my senior year, we all appeared on the team at the same time. One of them was Tony Cosenza, who had been offered a scholarship to go to Colby College and refused it, and regretted it, and that's what we ended up talking about at the class meeting later on that night. So it's education gets shaped by it, demographics get shaped very much by it. In Millinocket, the French lived across the tracks or in Shackville. The Italians in Little Italy, the WASP on Society Hill, not much society is, because you live that meant you get a salary rather than an hourly wage. My mother really freaked out when Charlie Civiello bought a house on Society Hill. Or when Mrs. Baker told her that I had taken Alice Gendreau home from the dance. Even worse, when I took Marilyn Madden, who was Jewish, the only Jewish family in town. My father, who eventually became chief engineer of the company, one of the conditions of taking the job was that he hired no one who was Jewish. So there was an ethnic awareness in these communities that it took until World War II and after that to erode. Religion. You're going to be in one of these towns and you're going to have Italian and French, you've got to have a Catholic church. And you promote it. No one like it? The company built the Catholic Church.
Just one or one per ethnicity?
No, it was very interesting in the Catholic Church in Millinocket because there was often tension between the French in the background and the Irish. And we had, and the Italians. So Father Quinn was Irish. The Italians couldn't stand it. They started a parochial school, right literally 50 yards away from the public high school. The Italians all went to the public high school. That's when I played basketball. I sometimes appeared in the program as Daniell. The French and the Irish went into the parochial school. Anyway, you can't deal with this. 2 Catholic churches in Bellows Falls, one for the Poles and one for the French and the Irish. So ethnicity, religion was very important. Corporations provided huge numbers, depending upon the timing it gets started, the geographical location, community services. In Millinocket, you could take time off to build a foundation for a house because the company decided they wanted everyone to own their own houses. So no company houses at all. Build ball fields. The Ambuscade was famous for what it did for Manchester. More common than these one company towns were towns in which there was not a single company in the source of this concentrated decision-making, and that would be like Lebanon, in which you may have had only one industry with several companies in that industry, making textiles would be a good example here in Lebanon, or you had multiple industries. But still factory life dominated this, and I think of Bennington, Vermont, or Claremont is a good example of had both textile and paper. It had machine tool, it had flock mill. It was diversified in a different kind of way, and that's my segue into the differences between these one company towns and the diversified towns, because they declined differently. But according to my notes, I'm through with part 2, and according to my promise, here's a point if anyone's got any other observations or questions. Yes?
Can you say something about the relation to the growth of these towns and the railroads? After all, whatever these companies made, they had to ship their products out.
Yep.
Did the railroads come first or come along at the same time?
Railroads get determined in part by geography, but the railroads went to where the business was. So if the railroad, as a general thing, skipped by one of these towns, you build a spur over to it. For example, going up along the Connecticut River, there's a spur that was in Springfield. Railroads were immensely important to create the marketing area for it. It resulted in some very strange directions of railroads. I forget the details of it, but the owner of the company lived in this town and wanted a railroad to go through there. The most famous local example is the routing later on with automobiles of Route 89. There's massive competition between those who wanted to go north of Lake Sunapee and those south of Lake Sunapee. Claremont wanted to go south. Claremont was the industrial center. At the time that came, industries were going down, hospitals and colleges were going up as workplaces. But the routing was really determined as much by geography as mountains for south Sunapee. It's going to be tough to build a road there. And that's the same with railroads. Places like Haverhill, for example, the bypass, just because of the geography from railroads. So Woodsville in the town of Haverhill, the village in the town of Haverhill. And the other thing I'd say, it built an alternative to village life. You began to have junction towns, which were created around the junction of the railroads. White River Junction is a product of the railroads, the name, not of the junction between the White River and the Connecticut River. Any other questions at this point? Okay, now we get to the favorite part of my talk. I just turned 80. I like to monitor decline. Decline is far more interesting than progress. And the key to happiness when you decline is to lower expectations faster than the reality. Everyone who's got no hair or white hair laughs at that. It's real. It's true. You ought to get up every morning and say, I hope I can do this. And then you do it. Now part of that is you never watch news. That makes you lower expectations. And news is what's wrong with the world. You can just decline. I've drawn my examples here from the towns I've mentioned most frequently, and the industries too, but there are plenty of other industries in New England had a collective regional identity. The boot and shoe industry, concentrated in Haverhill, Massachusetts, Brockton, areas around there. The machine tool industry, in Claremont, Springfield, and to a lesser extent in Windsor. non-ferrous metals, non-iron metals down in southwestern Connecticut, paper industry, dozens of prickly newsprint mills that began late in the century in northern New England. All of these declined, but the timing was different. Stu, you asked me about this earlier. And the big change was the changing nature of where you got your power from. As long as physical weight of water, the power of water was, New England would continue to have an advantage. But high tension wires didn't. Knowing when you began to have first coal and then oil as a major source of producing transportable power and machinery, electric machines that can use it, then New England's industry pretty much had in the old mill town sense of the term. Declining water power was important. Inexpensive labor petered out. When after emancipation, lots of labor was a lot cheaper in the South than it was. In the maritime industry, a huge difference. They didn't produce mill towns, unless you want to consider a shipyard as a mill. When you went to iron vessels, New England had a huge advantage in shipbuilding because of all the varied types of wood you had. You got iron ships, you got to get the stuff from somewhere else. Well, that virtually disappeared. The cost of heating plants. When you build a plant in the South, you don't have to put part of it underground. All that. The sequence of decline is one can be very precise about it. Before World War I, shipbuilding obviously, but the boot and shoe industry began to move out. In the 20s and the 30s, cotton textiles, that incidentally tended to produce a good deal of awareness. Big floods in the 30s that wiped out a lot of the machinery in the mills that were already down and so production moves away. Woolen mills here in Lebanon until after World War II. American Woolen Company went bankrupt. I'm not going to have my dates here. Bernie Goldfein, the American Woolen Company, went bankrupt. Government took over sold the plants down below the falls in the early 60s. Machine tool industry in the 1970s. And one that personally I had the most about is the newspaper industry in the 1950s. The impact of the either decline or closure of each of these depended very much on the nature of the communities in which the decline took place. The product of location, product of the kinds of mill buildings you had. You can't recycle a paper mill. It stinks. Cockroaches everywhere. Just look at the picture or the image of America, Millinocket, you can see why this is. We were told, I don't know whether it was true or not, when we were growing up, it was the largest paper mill under one roof in the world. And I remember I got scolded and I said, you know, I see an awful lot more than one roof there. It sits there with no one in it now. And whether the community was diversified in its industry. Examples, most extreme example is Millinocket. Basically, the company's history, management, etc. is too complex to relate, but if you close the mill in Millinocket, there's no other place to go for a job. There's some people, because the superhighway comes from about 10 miles away, work down in the Bangalore area, Population of Millinocket at its peak was 7,500. In the last census was 4,500. That's a serious drop in population. Manchester, in the 1950s, after the closure of the Amherst-Skip, when I came here as an undergraduate, everyone's model of something one should be unhappy about, a symbol of decay, was Manchester in the 1950s. But it had a different set of buildings. Boy, they built those factories like you cannot believe. Just get out of Claremont and you'll see. And a new aesthetic developed. As early as the 70s, a quotation here from Galbraith, I won't read it, saying, recycling these mills is what we do. They're beautiful. So you've got to re-educate the people to think of what's beautiful. A lot of stuff up here comes from that. It was diversified industrially after the collapse of the population level from 1920 to 1950 is about 80,000. It stayed level. Even though the predominant Amherst-Skip closed, it's now about 110,000. Springfield's a very interesting one. Just down the river here. Jones and Lamson, Bryant Trucking, Fetters, all left in the 1970s and the 1980s. Population didn't decline. Out of its location. They could work in Brattleboro, they could work in Ludlow, they could work in Keene. That means all the service people stay there because the population hasn't declined. People go elsewhere, part of the superhighway system. And gradually, you see those buildings in Springfield beginning to have lights on. And tonight, one of the Fetters in particular has got a healthcare service, whatever it is. I know it's Jones and Lance. Haven't seen anything at Ryan and Chuck or Claremont, fascinating community for me. Different industries from the beginning, all of which, the flock mill is gone, the textiles are gone, the machine tool is gone, the paper is gone, but the population stayed the same. And people eye those buildings there, and where the Common Inn restaurant is in Claremont. They eye those buildings, but what use can we make of them? And again, Claremont, work in London, its own kind of center around the college and a medical institution. And Lebanon, this is how I'll end my talk, diversified ownership and closure, they were kind of gradual. Yes, it's true that Burning Goldfine went under and lost somewhere, I've seen different figures, from 700 to 1,000 jobs for the closure of those mills in the early 50s. This place stayed open until, what, 80, sometime in the, maybe even the 90s. When did this one close? 85. 85, that's what I saw. Proximity to other judges. Factories are no longer the center of town. Now, back in the late 19th century, there was an art form called bird's eye views. You pretended you were up in a helicopter on the side of a hill and looked down on these towns and so you were happy of what they were doing. Then you subscribe and you got one of these and you put it up on your wall. Churches aren't front and center. No worshiping of white steeple churches this time. Smokestacks were front and center. That's what you were proud of. Well, now what happens is you're not so proud of your smokestacks. Up in Berlin, they've gotten rid of them. I say you could have a couple down here still. I bet there's some people wish it would disappear, but I don't know that.
One in Franklin has a tree growing out of the chap office.
Okay, well, environmentalists are like that. But we don't have to worry about trees around here. They're stronger than we are. But basically, proximity to other jobs. You could go to Hanover, and they pay a lot. And you could go go to Newport. I noticed in some of the interviews after the last woolen mills, the door, last woolen mill in the Upper Valley, it was staffed by significant numbers of people who had worked for the woolen industry here. And then West Lebanon, an increasing transportation village because of the railroads, and then that's a whole fascinating story about the relationship between Lebanon and West Lebanon, which is by Lebanon. The battle over the location of the high school needs a whole book. Some of you probably know a good deal about that. And the population. You know, well, some of the buildings could be recycled. I remember for years going to Rockdale's, the old factories. Ava Gallery in this building is a classic example of the process I'm talking about. Well, the population of Lebanon never went down. I looked these up just today. In 1950, it was 8,495. 1970, 9,725. 2000, I didn't look up 2010, you're close to 13,000. So the impact on communities varies depending upon what kind of a mill town it was, and that's where I'll stop. Summarize by saying I've been a student of New England towns for a long time. There are 1,384 incorporated towns in New England. I just redid my master list, and 112 incorporated cities. That number, I try to categorize them. What kind of town? College town, as Benda mentioned, suburbs, resort town, marketing towns. But as a historian, and with my own personal background, the phenomenon of the mill town remains my favorite, and that's the end of my talk. Last chance for a few questions. Yes.
Two questions, curiosity. I'm feeling bad for that one Jewish family up in Illinois. Why were they there?
Hardware store.
Okay. And then what induced you to leave Illinois?
Are you kidding? My fascination with decline didn't stop when I was 18 years. No, but the basic answer is I am kind of weird. How did somebody from George W. Stearns High School get a PhD from Harvard? And the answer basically is family first. There were 3 families in Millinocket that kids went to college: the Farnsworths, the Harrises, and the Daniels. I'm one of 6 children, 3 Dartmouth, 1 Cornell, 1 Middlebury, 1 Holyoke graduate. Family wasn't. We were part of the second level in Franklin, New Hampshire, of the industrial elite in the Daniel Paper Company. The family was important. I was most fortunate because coming from Stearns High School, I got a free ride at Exeter for 1 year after I graduated. Some guy showed up in our living room, as my father tells it, when my oldest brother was graduating from high school, and Warren was a bit stiff. He said, the principal tells me you've got a son who could stand a year at Exeter before he goes to college. And also, there's 3 younger brothers, and you can go to Exeter for half price. He can, and all the brothers can if they're smart enough, and I won't have to come back to you to say this. It's got awful time. All 4 of us went 1 year. That made a huge difference when I got to Dartmouth as an undergraduate, because I had a leg up. And Millinocket was important in the sense that the whole educational, informal educational culture was not like what we have today. At 16, you started following shifts in the mill. My 16th birthday, I'm not sure I got it the first time I went up to the room where you waited to see if they called you. My first job was shoveling salt. A lot of pulling wood. I had jobs in the mill, about 8 different occupations, that's very different than the culture, because the people in the school themselves think of themselves staying in the community. And I had the advantage of getting that kind of background. I always said, how do you become a historian? I said, it was pulling wood that did it. You've got to be patient. You basically have got a disciplined routine, or the grinderman's not going to have wood to put in it. So that's my own person. Yes.
I assume these rivers had to be an enormous civil engineering technology that they had. Where did the expertise and talent come from?
Well, I skipped over that part. The basic answer starts in general with the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal produced almost the profession of engineers. Now, in this society, you needed people who could have the capacity to solve problems. That's where brought up in a hard scrabble farm in New England was important. Your machinery is always breaking down. You get confidence in your capacity to make things work. And in a culture where an awful lot of, at least the male, and I expect in female conversation with different subjects, was about what's the possibility of producing something like this. You were encouraged. So there's a constant effort in all these little mill villages to improve. The net result of, when you get to the dams, was a gradual improvement in the utilization of water power. And you can get that maybe, I can't do this with any detail at all, but in water turbines. You know, you start with a big wheel, and it's an overshot wheel, a little drip of water at the top, and the weight drops it down. Then you get an undershot wheel, and then you get the water gushing down. And the place where you can best see the history of turbine construction is down in, I think, the Sutherland Mill. I may not have that right down the road. So it's an awful lot. But by the end of the century, there's professions of water engineers. Thayer School at Dartmouth gets started, not many people at it, in the 1870s. So a profession of engineers giving one an educational start, as well as just the practical know-how of being around and fiddled with it 20 times, and the 21st time you get it right. And these people all know how to shape machinery. It's just a blacksmith that does it. Everyone knows how to heat up iron and get a part a little bit different. And then the ethic of interchangeable parts, which started some ways down here in Windsor, but more important down in Connecticut, in Whitneyville. So those are my observations on the process of technological improvement.
Have you ever thought that the old mill buildings may have declined, but the industry and the ideas behind them have had a revival in the last 10, 20, or 30 years? I think of hypertherm, for example,
Yeah?
or Vutech in Maryland. I would expect that a lot of the mentality that went into build the old mills are building these new factories.
Well, I'm kind of off the beat as to what history does, in the sense that they always saw that if you don't know history, you're going to avoid problems, new problems, because history has lessons. History has no lessons, except that there are no lessons to learn from history. And that when you talk about some old idea re-emerging, as though the idea is sitting down in a bucket and suddenly it grows and it comes back. Every context is new. Each of our lives is individual. Our decisions are our decisions. The context in which the people do that new hypertherm plant looks beautiful from the outside. I haven't been in. Is going to be a function of what exists at the time, which may include people who knew something about, but every person about something in the past, but every person's going to have processed that information differently. So my basic answer is, you know, don't take my field too seriously. No one else does anymore. It's good as you age. So it's like political scientists who want to blame the American Revolution on Locke. The Revolution had nothing to do with Locke. It's just that something that somebody, Locke said a century and a half earlier, looks like something that somebody in a political science department was told as an abstract idea, and so Locke caused the American Revolution. Yes?
Yeah, you talked to me anyway, seemed to suggest there was a tacit agreement on the efficacy and the progress of these mills and the town, but I just don't know, because for every place you mentioned New Harmony and Robert Owen in Indiana, you had Brook Farms here, which seemed to go in a very different direction. And you know, from all the literature, we know the conditions were rather miserable in these mills. And as you said, 20 years, most people left. Was there this agreement, this general assumption that this was the best of all possible worlds?
We could have about 50 balls in the air. And my first observation would be, just but by our modern perspective, they should have been miserable. Doesn't mean they were. There's a huge debate, this literature amnesty. It's all based on oral interviews of people who work there. They say we liked it. It's tough for a historian to convince they were oppressed in terrible conditions, because they didn't think they were oppressed. And that's one of the ideas. One thing you learn from history is not to impose your perceptions on people in the past. So that's one kind of response to it. Towns in New England, from the very beginning, had a kind of expectation of a preferred form of whatever form they did. There's a book I cited in Tony, of course, about Dedham, Massachusetts, and the central theme is this was a successful utopian experiment within the framework of what they had expected in organizing it, setting down the ground rules and founding it, etc. People willingly went to these places because it was a better alternative than sticking around in farms. They did not have to struggle for workforce. They came from the countryside. They came from Europe. You want to know why people left? You know, after these towns get depopulated rapidly, it's because they saw that as a better alternative. And they, for the most part, stayed there. Some came back in the Great Depression. So that's my response to it. Yes, one more after this, and then we can all go.
You did not mention organized labor as a factor in decline, was it?
That's a huge argument. It's standard. People are very predictable. You want to get unimaginative people. It's people who with the talking heads on the shoulder. And they label everything liberal or conservative. Management always blamed labor, and labor always blamed management. Historians have tended to switch back and forth depending on what they were writing about. If you believed, as was common in the early part of the century, the so-called great man's theory of history, it was all the labor's fault. If you come in what we, in the business that I'm in, call the neo-progressive period of historical writing, then it's the companies that screwed up. And every story is different. To answer that question, you need a specific corporation, you need to know about management decisions, you need to know about management options. So I can tell you you've got the language for it, and somebody can do a really good service by trying to get at the stuff, particularly for the American Woman Company here. But according to what my student told me, all that stuff went to the government as they seized the properties in Bernie Profile and just disappeared. So you'll just have to imagine. Okay, that's it. We're all